So here it is, the original PS2 version of Final Fantasy X. It's pretty surreal that this game is 20 years old now, you know. When this first came out, this was definitely a big system seller, along with other PS2 games like Metal Gear Solid 2 and Grand Theft Auto 3. This was definitely one of the most hyped games of 2001. With that being said, let's open this. Alright, so there's the game. And here's the manual. So just a heads up, this manual does spoil the game a little bit. Nothing major, but just some minor spoilers. So I just thought I'd give you a heads up. Alright. Here's the table of contents, along with this nice render of Yuna. Alright, getting started. So this basically tells you how to set up the system and whatnot, and they included this in every PS2 manual, and the reason why they did that was, you know, for people playing the system for the very first time. So, start menu. So the title screen is kind of weird on this game, you know. So on the top here, it promotes the PlayOnline website. And then down here you have the Final Fantasy X logo. And beneath that it says Final Fantasy X. It's a little odd looking, but I guess in a charming way. Alright, save data. One memory card can hold up to 99 save files. If you have 99 save files of this game, that's some serious dedication right there, man. Field screen. So I believe this was like the first game in which you could move around in like a full 3D space. With the previous games, you know, the world map and the battles were obviously in 3D, but like the towns and dungeons, those were pre-rendered backgrounds. They weren't 3D. So I believe this is the first game that really pushed that full 3D environment. Now, this game still uses pre-rendered backgrounds in certain spots, but nothing like previous games. Alright, controls. So RPGs aren't known for having very complex controls. They're usually like a 3-button game, you know? You have like your confirm, your cancel, and your menu buttons, and that's about it, you know. You don't need a whole lot for an RPG. It's pretty simple. Alright, moving on to characters. So each character has their own advantage and disadvantage in this game. So for example, Tidus is like your warrior type, and Yuna is your summoner. Waka is the long range attacker. Lulu's your black mage. Kamari is like your blue mage, which is kind of like a jack of all trades character. Orin is like your armor piercer. He's good against armored enemies. And Riku's like your thief in the game. She's good at stealing stuff. Alright, and now we're on to the battle system. So, unlike previous Final Fantasy games, this gets rid of the active time battle system and goes back to more a traditional turn-based style, which hasn't been like that since Final Fantasy III on the Famicom. So because of that, it's more relaxing, where you could take your time because you're not under stress, you know? And honestly, I think I prefer that. What's also neat about this battle system is that you could swap out characters on the fly, and that doesn't count as a turn. You know, that's such a neat idea, and I know some RPGs tried to copy that style back then. Like, I know Mega Man X Command Mission has a similar battle system, and I think one of the Lord of the Rings games kind of copies it, but I'm surprised more RPGs haven't tried to copy that style. Okay, next up we have trigger commands. So occasionally you run into certain boss fights that will activate triggers, where you could either talk to them, or, you know, there's a few fights where you have to control your team and you kind of like pull back from the battle a bit. I don't want to give too much away for spoilers, but yeah, it's just another neat idea, you know, that they added to this game. Okay, overdrive. So overdrives in this game they're basically, you know, the limit breaks, and they go back to Final Fantasy 7 and 8 style, where you can choose when to activate it. You know, unlike 9, where it activated automatically when your gauge was full. It was kind of weird, and honestly an odd choice. So I'm glad they went back to the old style for this game. Alright, overdrive modes. So overdrive modes, they affect how your overdrive gauge fills up. So for example, Stoic charges when your character takes damage, and then Warrior charges when your character damages an enemy. Healer charges when the character restores your ally's HP, and Dancer charges when your character evades an attack. And that's just 4 of them. You unlock a lot more as the game progresses. So again, you know, they really went all out with the battle system in this game, and it's one of my favorite, to be honest. Alright, so next up you have your status effects. If you've played a previous Final Fantasy game before, you know what to expect. It's nothing new. So, you know, certain enemies can poison you, or they could cause you to go berserk, or confusion, stuff like that. But what's different about this game is that they disappear after each battle, and that definitely makes this game easier, which I'm sure some people didn't like, but I don't mind it, you know. It is what it is. Alright, next up we have abilities. So abilities are like your basic commands, like attack, magic, item. What's neat about this is that escape is actually a command in this game. So unlike previous Final Fantasy games where you had to hold the shoulder buttons to run, this goes back to, being actual commands. Like, again, which hasn't been like that since Final Fantasy 3. So, another neat thing. Sometimes it's neat to go back to the past, Okay, customizing weapons and armor. So this is a big part of the game, and something I really adore about it. So unlike previous games where, your weapons and armor just gave you preset attributes, you can actually customize your own in this. And how you do that is using certain items and spears. So some being common than others. Some are rare drops from enemies. And how you do that, for example, is you could add, let's say, +5 strength, or maybe you want to add a +10 magic to your weapon. Or maybe, auto haste or auto reflect, stuff like that. It's just another neat idea that really makes this game stand out from the previous Final Fantasy games. Alright, Aeons. So the Aeons in this game are basically your summons. But what's neat about this is that you can actually control them in battle. So it's not like previous games where, you summon them, they do damage, and they leave. You can also give them attributes and abilities later on in the game as well. Pretty much the same way that you customize your weapons. So, again, you can tell this game really went all out with customization, and it's just it works so well for this game. With other games, I don't know if I'd like it or not, but man, for this game, it just works. All right. Spear Grid. So, some people like it and some people don't. I personally love this, and honestly, it's my favorite way of leveling up characters in a Final Fantasy game. So, unlike previous Final Fantasy games where you would just gain experience and receive random attributes from each gained level, with this, you have to do it manually on this huge grid. So how you do that is you get spears from enemies and chests and whatnot, and you move the character's cursor to each node, which then allows you to activate that node using a spear. So, for example, an HP upgrade, you need to use what's called a power spear. For a speed upgrade, you need to use what's called a speed spear. And to learn an ability, you need to use an ability spear. So, now, how you move your cursor is after each battle, you get like these ability points or AP points. And after you get a certain amount, you gain one spear level, which with each spear level, you can move one space. So a level 1 spear allows you to move one space. And level 5 spear allows you to move 5 spaces. So it's really neat, man. I know it sounds very confusing and complex, but trust me, once you play the game, it all starts to make sense. And yeah, it's by far my favorite way of leveling up characters. Okay, so next up we have colors. So each character has their own color on this spirit guide, and all that really does is just to make it easier to identify that character. So again, it's a neat little bonus that they added to the game. So Tidus is aqua, Yuna is white, Auron is red, Kamari is blue, Waka is yellow, Lulu is purple, and Riku is green. So. And here we have a nice render of Riku. And then we get to the mini-games. So the big mini-game for this game is Blitzball, which I'm personally not a fan of. I know some people love it, and I know some people hate it. I have mixed opinions about it. I don't hate it, but I definitely don't love it. I can tell they put a lot of effort into it, and that it's a well-made game, but it just did not click with me, you know? It's basically like underwater soccer. So I tried several times, man, and I didn't care for it, unfortunately. And then you have Chocobos, because you can't have a Final Fantasy game without Chocobos. Alright, and then here's the credits. So what was neat about this game at the time is this used some fairly popular voice actors at the time. So for example, like Tidus is voiced by James Arnold Taylor, who would go on to voice Ratchet in the Ratchet & Clank games. And Waka is voiced by John DiMaggio, who was famous for voicing Bender in Futurama at the time. Tara Strong, who's done so many different cartoons and animes and whatnot. So you could tell they didn't want to just hire anybody off the street to do the voices for this game. They wanted to make sure, you know, they hired experienced voice actors. And yeah, here's where it kind of spoils the game a little bit. So here's your merchandise for figurines, your strategy guide, soundtrack, more statues and plushies and t-shirts and all that good stuff. And Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. Yeah, you know, this is one of those movies where it's either gotten better with time or it's gotten a lot worse. But I'd still like to watch these movies again one of these days. You know, for a video game movie, it's not terrible. It's not anything special, but, you know, I enjoyed it. And then here's your registration card that you would fill out and send away. Because in 2001, not everyone had the internet yet. So, okay, so where do I rank this? Honestly, I'd consider this my third favorite. Yes, it's one of the easier games in this series, but it's got a great story. It's got one of the best, if not the best, battle systems in the whole series. It's got great music, and overall, it's really stood the test of time. It's pretty amazing, you know. I played it back then. I recently replayed it again, and honestly, I can still see myself playing this game 20 years from now. It's that good. So, anyways, with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.